I'm Shahar Azani, and in the news, last week, a Jerusalem district court has ordered to freeze nearly $150 million of Palestinian Authority funds to pay in damages to families of victims of Palestinian terror. The decision comes following a lawsuit brought by Tel Aviv-based civil rights organization Shahar Azani Israel Law Center on behalf of relatives of victims from a number of attacks mostly carried out during the second Intifada in the early 2000s. A previous court ruling from last year found the Palestinian Authority to be liable for attacks along with other actors. In its decision Friday, the Jerusalem court ruled that the funds would come from tax money that Israel collects on behalf of the Palestinians. With me to discuss this important development and its general context is Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, the head of Shahar Azani. Nitsana is an Israeli activist attorney who has been leading the legal fight against Israel's enemies in courts worldwide. She pioneered the strategy of combating terror financing, the anti-Israel boycott campaigns, BDS, and the multitude of lawfare threats against the Jewish states by its enemy using civil lawsuits. She has represented hundreds of terror victims in legal actions against terror organizations and their supporters. She has won hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation on their behalf under the motto, bankrupting terrorism, one lawsuit at a time, my personal favorite. In 2019, Ms. Darshan-Leitner was chosen the third year in a row as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world by the Jerusalem Post. And in 2018, she was named by the Israeli financial magazine The Marker as one of the 50 most influential Israeli women. A mother of 6, including triplets, Ms. Darshan-Leitner is a graduate of Bar-Ilan University Law Faculty, and she holds an MBA from Manchester University. Nitsana, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today, and welcome back to JBS.
Hi, Shahar. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, in this time and age, going in the direction of another Zoom meeting, but such an important one today, to share a story that we want all of our viewers to know about. Maybe tell us a little bit about the lawsuit. How long has it been going on, and who is it that you're representing, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Do you remember the 2 soldiers that were lynched in the Palestinian Authority's police station in Ramallah in the beginning of the Intifada?
I absolutely do.
We all remember the pictures. We all remember the bloody hands in the window. That was the first case we filed against the Palestinian Authority. It was right in the year of 2000 when it happened. And we believe the Palestinian Authority had to pay for this horrible murder. And after short while, we had other terror attacks being done or perpetrated or being directed by the Palestinian Authority, like the 3 little children of the Cohen family that lost their lives in a bus bombing attacks in Kfar Darom, 2 restaurateurs from Tel Aviv that went to Tulkarem to buy plans for the restaurant and got killed by PLO activists, terrorists, the French Hill Junction terror attack that happened in 2002, and many people who were waiting just for the bus to come lost their lives in a suicide bombing attack. The 443 road, people that were driving innocently in their car in this road connects between Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, got killed by shooting attacks. We combined all these terror attacks and filed a lawsuit against the Palestinian Authority from the year 2000 until 2008. And these cases were litigated combinedly in the District Court of Jerusalem. They went on for nearly 20 years. And last summer, we finally received a judgment that found the Palestinian Authority responsible for all these 15 terror attacks. They found that the Palestinian Authority directed these terror attacks. They gave money, they gave ammunition, they gave safe haven, they gave manpower to the terrorists who committed the attack, and therefore they have to pay for the damage that happened as a result of this attack. So now we are discussing the damages part of the case. And before we get to a final judgment in this case, we went and asked the court to put a lien on the future judgment. We thought it would be 1.5 billion shekels. The court temporarily decided to be $500 million shekels, which is nearly 150 or 160 million dollars. And the court agreed to put a lien on this money. This is tax money that the Palestinian Authority receives in the end of each month by the Israeli government, who collects it from tax money from VAT.
But let's just wait 1 second before we go into the mode. I want to ask you something. You mentioned the terrorist attacks and the victims at the beginning, the people you represent. And I want to take a moment for the JBS viewers to actually understand what we're talking about, because for many people, it's just a fleeting headline on the news. Maybe you watch it in the evening news, you follow the funeral on TV, but there are long-term damages and the long-term pain and suffering and hurt that the families go through. I can tell you that to me, the memory of the lynching in Ramallah of Vadim Norzich of blessed memory and Yossi Avrami of blessed memory, some of these images I will carry with me for the entirety of my life, just like you mentioned, to see the bloodied hands and to see the kind of cruelty that is really embedded in, you know, the hatred and animosity that exists for two soldiers who just happen to be on reserve duty and take the wrong turn to end up, you know, one detail is incredibly painful when I think it was Avrahami's wife who called him, and one of the members of, you know, the lynching mob answered the phone and told her, "I just butchered your husband." Exactly. So maybe tell us a little bit on the human side, the human aspect of interacting with the victims and the victims' families. How is that like?
Listen, this is very, very difficult because you're asking the victims to come and revive the terror attack that they really just want to forget. They don't want to forget the victims, but they want to forget these sites, this horrible description that you just made, these horrible results of these terrible acts of murder. They want to let it go. And now you come to them and you ask them to participate in a lawsuit that requires a lot from them. And they're willing to do so. And you know why? Because they believe that they have to fight back. They believe that they should not be victims anymore. That if there is a way to prevent the next terror attack by taking the funds from the Palestinian Authority or from the terror attacks, if there is a way to make these terrorists pay, they will be the one who will do it. And it takes a lot. And, you know, when they get on the witness stands, for instance, to testify about what happened to them before the court, there is no dry eye left in the court. The sonographer cries, the lawyers cries, the judge cries, and this is the very, very emotional, obviously, but they tell the story, and you want to hear it. You want to hear it because you want to remember, because people really sacrifice life here to stay in the land of Israel, and it doesn't go away. It just simply doesn't go away.
And
so 20
this
years
battle
after,
you've waged for 20 years. You've been waging this battle.
Exactly. 20 years after, to come with such a ruling, it's an historic ruling. To come and say, guys, it was not a grassroots operation as the Palestinian Authority claims. It wasn't like random terror attacks of angry people that just took their weapons and took whatever they had in their hands and went and killed. No. It was a war. It was a directed attacks against Jews, against innocent people, directed by Yasser Arafat and later on the other leaders of the PLO, of Hamas, of Islamic Jihad. And the court, after reviewing all the evidence we filed in the case, and believe me, we filed so many evidence, because when you come before a court, you cannot rely on newspaper articles. You have to come with facts. You have to come with expert reports. You have to come with evidence which are admissible in court to convince the court that what you're saying is truly happened. And it's based, and it's not like rumors. Sometimes the government comes and say the Palestinian Authority is responsible. Once you go to court, you have to prove it. We provided I think it was 22,000 documents to
Wow.
prove the liability of the Palestinian Authority. This case went through 6,000 protocol pages, and it contained more than 200 hearings in court.
Wow. So just so that our viewers understand, we're used to the political blame game, to accusations, to op-eds in the paper. One day we have this discussion, another the discussion is gone. What you're talking about is a meticulous work that's being done for over 2 decades, and the level of proof is that of a court in order to reach that judgment by the court. So that's really an incredible milestone.
Absolutely. It was a tedious work, but I'm proud of the final results.
Amazing. So let's talk about the results, because I want to dive into the practicalities. You mentioned the point, and the story indicates also that the court actually gave the state of Israel until next month to request that the order be annulled. That means that Israel needs to consider what to do. Maybe appeal if it fears like the reason we've heard many a time, the freezing of the funds could destabilize the Palestinian Authority. So how does that come into play? What do you feel about this, and what do you think Israel should do? How does that work?
Right, because what we asked the Israeli government to do is to freeze $150 million from the Palestinian Authority's money that Israel gives them on a monthly basis. The amount Israel transfers every month is almost $180 million, meaning when you take 150 million of them, you actually take a full month budget from the Palestinian Authority. This is very significant. It's very painful. And the Israeli government might come and say, I can't really do it because this will harm tremendously the Palestinian Authority. It may even bring it into a bankrupt. And the government of Israel does not say on its own. The Palestinian Authority is the one that raises this argument. Each time you come and touch its asset, they come and say, I know we have a judgment against us. We know that we have to pay millions of dollars, but I'm sorry, we don't have the money. So the Treasury now, or the Attorney General, has the discretion to come and appear in court and stand to one side's position, either the victims who are entitled to receive their judgment once it's getting ruled, or the Palestinian Authority. Give her another freebie, give her another time just to for the court to find it responsible, but to let off without pay. And I believe that this time the Attorney General will stand on the side of the victims. I can tell you that in a previous case in the United States, the State Department was asked to make the same decision, and they ruled otherwise. They came and said to the court that the Palestinian Authority is a national asset of the United States in the Middle East. They wanted to keep existing to the side of the State of Israel. They don't want it to go bankrupt. And I must tell you that, few $100 million for the Palestinian Authority, it's very painful, but they have the money. They have the resources. They pay $300 million a year to the prisoners who are sitting in the Israeli jail for these terrorists who killed innocent people and their families. Let them take this $300 million and pay it to the victims. So it's not true the Palestinian Authority does not have money to pay. They just have priorities where they spend the money. And the Israeli government, as opposed to the State Department, should not play to their hands, should not play their game.
And what happened to what happened in the American case? Was the case rejected? What did the court do? They
brought this argument before the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal vacated the judgment based on lack of jurisdiction. They found a technical argument to side with the Palestinian Authority. And when we filed a writ to the Supreme Court, we lost the writ for the same argument, that there is no jurisdiction to litigate against the Palestinian Authority in the United States. But I'm telling you that we did not stop there. We went to Congress. We told Congress that there is a problem because we filed this case. It was a 2004 case based on a law that they legislated, the Anti-Terrorism Act, that allows victims that were killed outside of the United States to bring their case in the United States. It grants special jurisdiction to the courts in the United States in cases of terrorism. It's like an extraterritorial jurisdiction. So they have to fix the problem. And the way for them to fix the problem is to reinstate personal jurisdiction. And the Congress agreed. The legislature amended the law and say that if the Palestinian Authority wants to keep receiving aid from the United States government, they have to agree to personal jurisdiction when it comes to terror victim litigation.
It also makes perfect sense because, in a way, for the only path for any kind of settlement or peace or understanding go through the understanding of one's crimes. And what you're asking, Nitsana, is for justice to be done and to be seen and to be visible, and for those responsible to take responsibility for their deeds, not only for the perpetrators, but also for the victims.
Absolutely. If the Palestinian Authority wants to act like a sovereign entity, they have to take responsibility for their acts. If they incited to terrorism, and if they directed terror attacks, and if they killed innocent people who are responsible for their death, they have to pay. They have to clean up their acts. And they have to announce that they no longer support terrorism.
Okay, now I just want to move on and ask you, beyond this specific case, maybe tell us a little bit about the global work that you and Shurat Adin do in fighting anti-Semitism and the enemies of Israel.
This is one of the cases we have litigated in the past years. Our cases are on behalf of the citizens of Israel, the state of Israel, interests that the state of Israel has to prevail in terms of security, in terms of fighting for its survival. We fight BDS, those who want to delegitimize the state of Israel, those who want to isolate it, to sanction it, to boycott it. Every time it comes to illegal actions, we are there. We can file lawsuits against those who boycott Israel, not the one who called to boycott Israel, but the one who actually do it, for violating anti-discrimination laws in different countries. We fight on behalf of the IDF soldiers that are blamed for war crimes. We go to the International Criminal Court and file war complaints against those who are the real war crimes, criminals in this conflict, like the heads of Hamas, the heads of the PLO, the heads of the Palestinian Authority. Because, as you know, the state of Israel is not a player in the International Criminal Court. They're not a signatory to the Rome Treaty. And somebody has to raise these allegations, not to leave the court open only to the Palestinian side. Shurat Adin goes and raises these arguments. And other cases like flotilla to Gaza that comes every year or every other year, trying to breach the sea blockade that Israel has over Gaza. We, in legal actions, prevent these flotillas. All the fight against UNICEF when they come and condemn Israel for killing Palestinian children, where we all know the truth, that these Palestinian children were killed because they were pushed by Hamas, the organization, to go and try to infiltrate into Israel, to go and get a knife or any other weapon to go and kill Israelis. Hamas used these children as human shields, used them as soldiers in the war, total violation of the international law. And this is why when UNICEF wants to come and describe what happened in the past years in Israel, in the border with Gaza, they have really to say the truth and to show who's responsible for the death of these children. Every time.
Yes, every time.
Every time there is a challenge against the state of Israel, that its answer is in the legal arena. Shurat Adin is there. Shurat Adin is fighting back.
Well, that's amazing. And I just want to ask you, you mentioned the lawfare against and for Israel. Maybe talk a little bit about the kind of work you do on social media and as it pertains to social media, because we've seen a lot of anti-Semitism, even at this time around coronavirus and beyond, it's being prevalent on social media. What do you and Shurat Adin, what do you do in this regard?
Look, the social media giants, Facebook, Twitter, and Google, come and provide social media services to designated organizations. And this is actually prohibited according to the American law, according to the Anti-Terrorism Act. Facebook is not allowed to have Hamas open a page on its platform. It's forbidden. Like a bank in the United States is not allowed to open a bank account to a designated organization. The same way Facebook is not allowed to open a page to Hamas. Twitter is not allowed to open an account to Hezbollah. And YouTube, Google is not allowed to let ISIS to run beheading videos on their platform. So anytime the social media networks conduct business with a designated organization, it's a violation of the Anti-Terrorism Act. And it imposes criminal and social liability on the one who violates it, meaning damages, meaning monetary lawsuits. So we went and filed several lawsuits on behalf of terror victims against Facebook, against Twitter, against Google, for violating the Anti-Terrorism Act, demanding compensations. We have lawsuits that are going on in New York and in California, and one of them now is in the Supreme Court, hoping to change the policy of the social media networks when it comes to terrorism. Our message is very clear. There should be zero tolerance to terrorism on the internet.
That is downright inspirational, Nitsana. I have to ask you something just to end with this. You are a fearless fighter for Israel in these fields internationally and even within Israel. You stand by the victims of terror. You could have chosen a different career as a jurist and an attorney. You could have taken a much more comfortable path and looking into, the more usual mundane court cases rather than look victims of terror in the eye and carry this banner, especially as you're trying to combat the real enemy, which is the specter of realpolitik and deal-making behind the scenes. What propels you? What makes you who you are? What made you do this and choose this path?
Shahar, you remind me that in 2008, towards the end of the Intifada, we thought that this is it. We're going to finish all these cases. We're going to, close the office and go and retire in Boca Raton. And then another wave of terrorism started, and other challenges against the state of Israel occurred. And when our enemies realized that they cannot beat us militarily, they started using non-conventional weapons, the BDS, the lawfare, and we couldn't sit still. We couldn't sit still because somebody had to do this work. And because we were already known and we had connections with hundreds of lawyers all over the world, and we knew how to fight back, and we had the power, the strength, and the desire to fight back, we came and continued doing it. In the end, we live in Israel. In the end, we just don't have a choice. We have to fight back because I want my kids to go to school and come back home safe. And I want people to walk on the streets and sit in cafes and going to malls safely, happily. This is our country, and therefore we have to do anything we can in order to make sure that we are living safely in our country. And it's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very hard. But in the end, we are going to win because we are fighting for our national survival.
I couldn't agree with you more, Nitsana, on this and beyond. I want to thank you for joining us and for elaborating on this important topic on JBS. I wish you great success in your fight against terrorism and truly salute you and your efforts and for your support of victims of terror and for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Keep up the great work. And to all I say, stay safe and stay healthy. I'd like to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golub, our technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDevitt, and to the producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. From JBS, I'm Shahar Azani, and until next time, see you soon. להתראות.